All right, hello and welcome to the MRSC Rosters webinar for public agency members. Thanks to all of you for being here today. My name is Tara Anderson. I've probably met some of you in person or on the phone. I'm the manager of the MRSC Roster service, and I will be your presenter today. I want to give a big thanks to my colleagues Leah Licivita and Paige O'Sullivan. They'll be making sure the presentation runs smoothly. They've already helped me through some troubleshooting this morning, so a big thanks to them for that. They'll also be sending your questions to me at the end of the presentation. So you can send those in at any time, but we'll be saving that for the end. If you have to leave early, you can grab my contact info here on this slide and send your questions in later. So before we jump into the presentation, I just want to touch on a few technical notes. So when you first jumped into this webinar, you should have seen this side sort of panel pop up for you, and you can expand or collapse the toolbar just by clicking that orange arrow, and then you can expand the question section to type your question and send that in at any time. Again, we're going to respond at the end of the presentation. If you're having trouble with audio, then you can try the listen by phone option, and you can see that number here on the slide. So if you want to jot that down now as well, you can reference that if you're having trouble, but also if you are having difficulties, you can chat in and Leah or Paige would be able to help you out. Also, here's our number for the front desk, so you can give us a call and get assistance that way. Just so you all know, this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be made available pretty soon, within the week. So I'll email the recording out to all of you so that you can share it with others in your office. And also, you know, if you have to leave early, you can reference the portion that you missed. So what we'll be covering today is really going to be most helpful for those public agencies who are newer to using the MRSC Rosters service, also for any staff who might be new to using the MRSC Rosters, or those of you who just are looking for a refresher. So we'll be reviewing what is included in your MRSC Rosters membership. We'll touch on the legal notice posting. We'll go over the business application process, and we'll talk about how you should be using the MRSC Rosters to access your rosters and search for businesses. And then again, we'll have time for questions at the end of the webinar. We will not be reviewing purchasing or bidding procedures, but you can find more information like that on the website if you click on the Public Agency tab and then click on the link that says Contracting Resources. So in case you're not familiar with our organization, I'm just going to give you a quick introduction. MRSC Rosters is a service that is part of the private nonprofit MRSC, which has been supporting Washington local governments for over 80 years through trusted consultation, research, training, and collaboration. And I'll just show a quick video of the MRSC website so you know where you might find some great resources. MRSC is funded primarily through a portion of the local share of the Washington State Liquor Revolving Fund, so that all city and county elected officials and staff can access MRSC's services without paying direct fees. In addition, MRSC provides services to a few special district associations through contracts, and we offer fee-based services, including MRSC Rosters. So I would encourage you all to visit mrsc.org to check out the great resources that we have on the website, and you can check out other trainings as well. The MRSC Rosters, like I mentioned, is an associated but separate service of MRSC, funded entirely from public agency membership fees and business membership fees where those are applicable. Specifically, MRSC Rosters is a membership roster service which hosts your agency's individual small public works consultant, and if you've chosen the vendor rosters option, we would also host that vendor rosters in an online shared database. We provide all of the legal maintenance that is needed to utilize a roster contracting process. From the MRSC Rosters homepage, you can click on the Public Agency tab, and you'll be able to find much of the information related to your membership, some of what we're covering today. So you can find FAQs, you can find information about the legal notices and instructions for how to use the MRSC rosters. So it's a good website to be familiar with. And of course, as questions come up as you're using our service, click on Contact Us. You can submit a contact form or grab our contact information and reach out to us directly. So let's go ahead and talk specifically about your MRSC Rosters membership. Your Rosters membership includes the hosting of your individual small public works roster and consultant roster within the shared online database. It includes optional hosting of your individual vendor roster if you've chosen that contract option. It also includes posting of the required roster legal notice on your agency's behalf. We provide customer support for business registration and application renewal, as well as any other business support that is necessary. And we provide the maintenance of the electronic business applications in the searchable database. Of course, the core element of your MRSC Rosters membership is the hosting of your individual public agency rosters in the shared database. Your agency has one account, which includes your small works roster and consultant roster. And again, if you did choose to use the vendor roster component, it would also contain your vendor roster. The rosters are made up of the applications of businesses who have specifically registered with your public agency. And here I just have some more details about the rosters and what differentiates them from each other, which most of you are probably pretty familiar with. The legal notice posting is something that is also included in your membership. This is the statute required legal notice where we notify businesses of your rosters and let them know that they can register at any time during the year. So these notices are regionally focused and posted the first Monday of January and June in newspapers of general circulation per county, such as the Seattle Times, the Spokesman Review, and the Kitsap Sun, among others. You can view the full list of the newspapers that we publish in on the website, and I'll show you where that can be found in a minute here. The posting for those agencies who utilize the small works and consultant roster is published annually, once a year. So those agencies who are joining or renewing by December 1st each year are going to be published in the January legal notice, while those who join or renew by May 1st each year will be published in the June legal notice. And then those who are using the vendor roster in addition to the small works and consultant roster will be published twice a year, so they'll appear in both notices. And then here I'll play a little video to show you where you can find the legal notice information on the website. And you'll just click on the public agency tab, scroll to click on the legal notice link, and then if you scroll down, you'll see various links that will give you information. Here is the most recent legal notice, which we published in newspapers on June 1st. So just as a reminder, all of you should be saving copies of the notice for your records. If you have questions about obtaining copies, you can let me know. We do collect the affidavits and keep copies on file ourselves, of course. So if there is a point at which you realize you maybe missed a posting, reach out to me directly, and I should be able to get you what you're looking for. I do want to remind you all too that if you have an internal requirement to post a roster legal notice in a newspaper that we do not publish in, then it is your responsibility to post in that publication, or you may want to consider adjusting your roster legal notice policy so that the posting we do publish meets your obligations. And I do think that, you know, all of you should visit this portion of the website just to review the details of the legal notice posting. It can be helpful to have an understanding of that. So another thing that's important to keep in mind is that it is very necessary that all of your agency staff are aware of your MRSC rosters membership and that they're educated enough that they can direct interested businesses to registration information with the MRSC rosters. So if you are new or if you have new staff coming on board, this is a good time to remind your staff and to refresh yourself of your agency's use of the MRSC rosters for your small works consultant and, if applicable, vendor roster. The staff in your organization should understand that the MRSC rosters membership applies to all departments in your agency, and no staff member should be using any previously maintained rosters. We also understand that a variety of staff are involved with service agreements with your agency. So since your roster contract is due for renewal once a year, that requires the payment of your membership fee. It's good to make sure your finance department is aware of that so that renewal can happen smoothly and the fee can get processed easily. So again, just, you know, it's always a good time to provide reminders to staff if you feel like folks might need a refresher. And because this webinar is being recorded, feel free to share it with others who are using the MRSC rosters in your organization so they can have a chance to also get a little refresher. If you are new to the MRSC rosters or have just begun using the vendor roster component, then if you haven't contacted your business community already to announce your use of this service, then I encourage you to go ahead and do so. It's important, obviously, that your businesses are aware of how they can be eligible to work with you. That's what they're interested in. So make sure that you're communicating that out as best as you can. On the website, we do have some templates under the transition assistance link that give some sort of sample language of how you might announce to staff, announce to businesses, and also examples of how you can communicate on your website that you're using the MRSC rosters. It's really important to make sure that there's a clear link to the MRSC rosters page so that businesses especially know where to go when they're looking to get signed up with you. So now we'll go ahead and transition to talking about how businesses that you work with go through the sign-up process. It's just helpful to have an understanding of that so that if you are in a position of assisting a business with this, you can sort of understand what it is that they're going through. Businesses who are interested in registering with your agency or any of the participating public agency members can join at any time. They follow a pretty simple 3-step process. They'll visit the website, mrscrosters.org, click on the business tab, scroll down to create an account. This will link them to an application, which they'll fill out. And once they submit that application, MRSC verifies that they meet the minimum state requirements to work with Washington public agencies, and then that business is listed for 1 year. They are required to renew annually to confirm their information is current and to remain listed. And we send out reminders to all of our businesses to let them know that it's time for them to renew. So that's not your responsibility. That being said, it is the business's responsibility to maintain an active application and to maintain updated and accurate information. Also, I want to mention that we have two application options for businesses. The default application is our basic application, which is a free application. All businesses can sign up for free and get listed for free with the agencies that they choose to be listed with. They can get listed with up to 9 different agencies for free and can change those selections at any time. And there's also an enhanced membership. Most businesses who use the enhanced membership are going to be larger businesses, since the enhanced membership essentially allows businesses to sign up with a statewide listing, all participating agencies, or by county grouping. Most of these large businesses are just providing their services across the state, and so they're not limited by their location. So that's the difference there. So that being said, I'll move into talking about some of the portions of the business application, the pages that the business would be going through. So the sections include roster and business type. This is where the business will choose which roster they want to be listed on, and they can choose any combination of small works, consultant, or vendor roster. And their selection of their roster type is going to determine the service categories that they're going to select from later in the application. They can also self-certify as a small business in this section of the application. And they also have the option to indicate whether or not their gross revenue is under $250,000 and or under $100 million, as this relates to the limited public works projects as defined in RCW 3901-155. This information is something that you get to review when you're downloading a business application. It is also information that you can review when you're downloading your spreadsheet of businesses after you've searched your roster. So you'll see what that looks like later on in this presentation. So once they select, their roster type and their business type, they then are going to move through these other sections. Of course, they're going to have contact information listed. There's a classifications and licenses section. We collect insurance information. They can indicate certifications as well. So if they're women-owned or minority-owned, this is something that they would be entering into their application. And again, this information is something that you can review in their application directly, but also in the spreadsheet that you would be able to pull after you've run your roster search. Consultants are required to upload a statement of qualifications. And this is something that you can download when you run your roster search. Project summaries is another section that businesses can populate, though that's optional, so not all businesses are going to include project summaries. And then the last two sections are the service categories selection page and the public agency rosters selection page. And we're going to look at those in a little bit more detail. So the services section is where the businesses select the specific services they provide based on the roster types they indicated earlier in the application. It is free for businesses to register with your agency and to select all of the services they provide. In the basic application, businesses can select service categories individually, so they'll just click one by one. So for example, if they chose the small works as their roster type, they would be here in the section of their application. They could then, select the various services they provide, as you can see here in this little demonstration. So they can select as many as are applicable to them. And then they would just click to save and continue to move on to the next section of the application. If the business did choose to use the enhanced application, they can actually select by this group, like select all grouping. If they do that, a pop-up does show up on their screen, just reminding them, hey, do you actually provide all of these services? Don't select services that you don't provide. We know that that's important to you agencies out there, you don't want to have businesses popping up on a roster when they don't actually provide the service you're searching for. I know that that happens. We try our best to communicate to businesses to choose accurately. Of course, you know, like with any other roster application, it is the business's responsibility to accurately depict their services. We don't have a method for, you know, auditing the businesses to determine whether or not they actually provide the services they've indicated, and we can't limit the number of services that the businesses select. So at this point, we just do our best to educate our business members and give them, you know, tips for best practices for, you know, just displaying their business information in a way that's going to better encourage good relationships with public agencies like yourself. So once they move through this section, the businesses then arrive at the public agency roster section. This is where they're going to choose which agency rosters to be listed on. And again, I have a little video here. And as you can see, you know, when using this basic application, they're just going to select one by one. If they're using Enhanced, they can select by grouping as demonstrated. And then also, alternatively, if they provide services across the state, they can select everybody. Again, when you're working with businesses and trying to help them get registered with your agency, just keep in mind that the business might already have an account, but they do have to select your agency specifically in order for you to find them on your roster. So if you do not find them in your search, they of course should not be considered registered on your roster. The good news is that they can update their accounts and their selections at any time. And this means they can edit their service category selections, they can edit their roster selections for the agencies to be listed with. And those changes are reflected immediately in the database, which means if you're approaching a deadline and you want to make sure you can consider a business, we can help them get those items updated and make sure that they are on your roster so that you can consider them. Also, if you do have a business who's submitting an application and a deadline is approaching, you need a review process to be expedited, let us know. We can expedite the review process in those circumstances. I will say that it can't be the same day. We would need at least 24 hours notification if you need to make sure they're on your roster, just because of the way the database communicates with the website itself. So don't cut it too close, but if you are working on a tight deadline, just reach out to us. We'll do our best to help you out. Once the business has completed all of these required sections, they'll have the ability to just submit that application for review. We review complete accounts on Tuesdays and Fridays, so it usually takes about 2 to 3 business days for a business to become registered, and the business is not registered until we've approved their application and they receive a confirmation email from MRSC rosters. Like I mentioned, we verify that businesses meet the minimum Washington state eligibility requirements to work with Washington public agencies. All businesses must have a valid Washington UBI number, an active Department of Revenue account, and a federal tax ID number. Typically, this applies regardless of if they are in an out-of-town supplier, out of state, but there are some exceptions that apply to out-of-state suppliers. So in those cases, we work individually with the vendor. Small works contractors cannot be debarred from public works projects, and they need to have an active workers' comp premium status if applicable. We do also now check on the contractor's L&I training status based on that new requirement from L&I that was issued about a year ago. So that's another item when you are reviewing business applications or checking out your spreadsheet after you've run a search on your roster. You can see if the business has completed the training, if they need to complete the training, or if they are exempt from the training. And then consultants, must upload a general statement of qualifications. If the business meets all of these qualifications, then we'll send them a confirmation email, and they'll be registered for 1 year from the date of verification. If we have questions about their information or their application seems incomplete, we'll email them to request clarification and work with them before we register them. And I do have to say that although we verify business eligibility prior to registration on the rosters, it is still your responsibility as the public agency to verify the business qualifications prior to awarding a contract. We do not re-verify business qualifications when the businesses renew their accounts. Businesses are required to renew and confirm that their information is still accurate. That is their responsibility, but we are not re-verifying and rechecking. So now we're going to shift into talking about how your agency, you and your staff are going to be using the MRSC rosters to search your roster for eligible businesses. If you have questions about some of the prior items that we've covered, you can start sending those in if those are at the top of your mind right now. We'll save those for the end during the Q&A session, so we'll get to those a little bit later. So when your agency has a project and you're using a roster contracting process, you're going to visit the MRSC rosters website, and you'll enter your login information to access your agency's account. And you'll simply land at a page that will look like this with your roster options at the top. So once you are here, you're going to have 3 options for finding business information. Most often, especially when you have a project that you are about to launch into, you're going to use this first option here of generating a roster and searching by the service category and moving on in that process. But I will go through some of the other options here. Sorry about that. So one option is to download all of your business contacts. You'll download by a roster type. And this just gives you a spreadsheet of all the contact information for those businesses registered on that roster. And this can be helpful, if you have a workshop or information coming up that you want to share out with your businesses. That's usually the most useful thing there. You can also search for a business to find a specific application. This is helpful if you want to confirm a business is registered, or if you already are working with a business and you need to grab their application info. You can download this as well or print it for your records. So be aware that this is a way of just accessing those specific applications. But like I mentioned, really most often you're going to be using this first option of generating the roster. So with the generate a roster process, you're first going to determine which roster type to search by: small works, consultant, or vendor roster. Of course, this is going to depend on your needs, what type of project it is, etc. So for example, to conduct your service category search for construction type businesses, you're going to click on the small works roster to get started. And after you select that, you're going to be brought to the list of specific service categories. It's going to look a lot like what we saw in the business application because you're searching by the same services that the businesses select, obviously. Makes sense, right? So once you're here, you can select the service categories that you need to search by. You can select individual categories, just one, such as agricultural irrigation systems, or you can select multiple categories if they apply, as you can see in this little video. And then you can go ahead and select the box that allows you to search for businesses who match all selections, which you'll see in a second here. There's also an emergency work option that will filter for businesses who specifically provide emergency work. This item is actually pretty important if you're selecting multiple categories, because this is going to say that the results are going to match all of the services you've selected. So if you need someone who's providing all of these services here, this is going to guarantee that the businesses on that list have selected every single category you have also selected. This can give you a shorter, more accurate list. If you don't click this box and you select multiple categories, you're going to, of course, end up with a less specific, much longer roster. So this can be pretty helpful. Once you've made your selections and you're ready to move forward, then you'll click the Search Businesses button to move on. So once you do that, you're going to land at a page that looks like this. This is your initial generated roster, but this is not the end point. Just note the progress bar here. You're not done yet. So this is going to indicate the search you conducted, the service category you chose, etc. And then it's also going to provide you with a list of the businesses. And you can click on the linked business names to review their applications, and you can download the SOQ documents as well. Note that to move forward from this page, you do have to click to save or print. That will activate the continue button to move on in the process. That's really important. A lot of folks get hung up here, and part of that is just we need to have better, a better call to action there to just make sure people know that they need to keep going in the process. But the reason for this is it's your way of saving that initial roster for your records, which is very important. As you all probably know, you want to have that trail of how you ended up with the roster you ended up with and ended up contacting the businesses you contacted. So this just gives you that extra assurance that you can save that list, you have it, you can point to it. So just be aware of that. And then I do want to sort of touch on how businesses end up on your generated roster. So a business is going to end up on your roster in one of three ways. They individually selected your specific agency, or they use the enhanced membership and selected to be listed with all participating agencies in the county where you're located, or they use the enhanced membership and selected to be listed statewide with all participating agencies. So as with any roster individually maintained by an agency or hosted by us, businesses are not required to be physically located in your jurisdiction. Therefore, we do not have a built-in system where you can filter by location. This does mean you're going to have businesses show up on your roster that are not located in your area. I know that can be a pain point and can be frustrating. I get that. I know that there's a desire to work with more local businesses as you're able to do so. So I would just recommend that when you're writing the requirements for, that you include in your bid documents, that you pay close attention to how you're using that as a way to encourage local participation. And if you have sort of questions about that, I'm not the best resource for that, but we have consultants here at MRSC, so you can always submit a question to ask MRSC and dig a little deeper into that topic if you're interested in it. So we'll go ahead and move on here. Once you have moved past that page, you're going to see this next option to just move forward and solicit businesses. This is really the best way to go, is just to click solicit businesses, move forward without narrowing your results. The reason for this is it's really the easiest way to meet equitability requirements, just to solicit your project opportunity to all the businesses listed. you'll just continue without narrowing that list. We do recognize that you might have a really long list of businesses and that you want to utilize an internal policy that allows you to contact a limited number of businesses, such as like 3 to 5 businesses. If this is the process that you use, then you do have the option of narrowing your list within the roster search process here. So like I said, meet those equitability requirements. Easiest way to move forward, just solicit and move forward to the last page. Otherwise, if you're using an internal process, click this checkbox to narrow your results, and I'll show you what that looks like. So from here, check that box. It's going to activate checkboxes next to business names. You'll select these names, at which point you'll again need to save or print this new narrowed roster, and that is going to reactivate your solicit businesses button. And again, the reason for that is just that you want to make sure you have a record of that narrowed list, of course, right? So if you are choosing that process, make sure that you are saving, documenting, and also making sure that you're remaining equitable within your internal policies that allow you to rotate. So once you have gone through that process or clicked solicit all, you're going to land at the final page of the rosters search, and that's your sort of download contacts page. This is where you can get the contact information and grab this spreadsheet that allows you to review all of the contact information. So let me play this video, and hopefully it's easy enough to see, but this first option is to download all contacts. And this gives you an Excel spreadsheet. I really recommend that this is what you go with, just because you'll see it gives you not only contact information, location information, but it also is going to give you information like the classifications and licenses. I'm sorry, it's not going to give you that. It's going to give you the certifications information though. It's also going to indicate, like I mentioned, it's going to indicate the training status. It's going to tell you if the business is identified as a small business and so on. So not only is it helpful for just having that spreadsheet tracking who responds to your RFP or RFQ, but it's also great for you to be able to filter or identify women-owned businesses and be able to document that information, which I know can be really valuable and important. So there's also the email all contacts. Essentially, this is just going to automatically open your preferred email client. I want to pause here and just point out it will put all the contacts in the to box. Not ideal, just because businesses don't necessarily want to have everyone grabbing their email information. So it can be best to copy and paste that info and put it in the BCC box so that you're not providing everyone's email address to all the other businesses that you're contacting. So just be aware of that. But then otherwise, it's a handy way to just get that information automatically populated. It's really not that much different than just copying and pasting from this box. It's kind of a redundant feature, but another option depending on what's preferable to you. So that is really it. That's the final page of the process. So again, just make sure that when you are going through your search process, you're paying attention to your little progress bar up here and not stopping, after you run that initial search. I think it's really valuable to get to this final portion where you can download the spreadsheet, have that for your documentation purposes. So with that, we'll recap a few items before we open it up for Q&A. To access your specific rosters, you're going to log in using that username and password you've been issued. You can view instructions and other helpful items under the Public Agency tab on the website. Make sure that you are or have communicated your use of MRSC rosters to all staff and to all businesses. And then also make sure that when these legal notices are published, you're saving copies of that paper. Like I mentioned, the most recent publication was on June 1st or the week of. So just be aware of that moving forward. And we do send emails out to remind you all, when we are publishing these things. So we do our best to communicate these items to our members. If you're concerned that you haven't been getting emails, please reach out to us. We can check to make sure we have all of your contact info in the right spots. So we'll go ahead and move into the Q&A session here. Just as a reminder, you can expand the toolbar, expand your question box, type in your question and submit it to us. And I can see a couple questions have filtered in, but I'll give us a couple more minutes or seconds for those questions to come into us. And while we let those come in, we'll just remind you of some upcoming webinars. Registration is open for these great webinars with MRSC, especially those of you who aren't familiar with MRSC and all of the services it offers. This is a great one. It's free, which is awesome, and it's just a really helpful overview of how you can access the sample document library, what you can expect when you're submitting an inquiry for some one-on-one consultation and things like that. So just be aware of these that are coming up. And then we'll go ahead and jump into questions. If you don't have time to stick around for the questions, feel free to just send a direct email to me, and I'll get back to you when I can. And I will honestly say there are many questions that I can't answer, but I have the resources to get answers for you. So don't be shy. Send your answers, or send your questions in, and I'll do my best to get the answer using all the resources at my fingertips. Mostly Judy Isaac, who is one of our consultants here, and she is amazing. So some of you might know her, and she is an awesome resource. So the first question I see popping in here is, do you keep records of all suspension and debarred checks for SAO auditing review if needed during an audit? No, we do not. We do not keep a record of that. And then another question that we see coming in is, if they didn't want everyone's email address, they should have paid more attention to whose rosters they were signing up for. They can't have their cake and eat it too. Okay, that's a good comment. And I don't disagree with you on that. Just, that's an issue that has come up. So some agencies prefer to, for transparency's sake, send the email with the emails in the to fields. That kind of just makes it a more transparent process. Other agencies have other ways of ensuring transparency in that process and choose to use the BCC option. So yeah, it can really depend on your internal practices and policies and what works best for your agency. So I appreciate the little feedback though. And it looks like we don't have any other questions coming in, which is totally fine, no pressure. I will touch on a common question that we get from agencies, which is, they're running a search and they contact us because they don't find a business on the roster, even though that business says they're registered, they are on the roster. So Usually the reason why that is going to happen is either the business has not selected the service category that you searched by, the business application actually has expired and the business has neglected to renew, just forgot, which happens. Or it's possible that they never completed their application. So there are a slew of sort of application issues the business might be facing there. In this case, it's super easy for us to just check on the business application for you and to see what's going on. If the business, forgot to renew and their application became inactive in the system, they can renew immediately. And they can, once they renew in our system, they would automatically be relisted with you. That should be an immediate thing, unless they were never active, in which case they have to be reviewed. But if it's simply that they didn't renew, all they need to do is renew and they're immediately back on there with you. And like I mentioned earlier, they can edit their selections at any time. So again, that should alleviate that problem, that disconnect of not finding a business on your roster that you believe should be there. So just keep that in mind and know that we're here to help out with those issues. So we have a comment from one of our audience members, and I think it's helpful that we share it out. So the comment is, one of our vendors had an expired UBI date, but when we went to the Washington State Secretary of State, they were current. So just keep in mind you can go to the SOS too. So yeah, thank you so much for that comment, for that reminder. That's super helpful. Much appreciated. So we have another question that came in. The question is, what is the best way to get a vendor to join? That's a great question. And I think the best way is really just to direct them, and direct them in multiple ways to the MRSC rosters website. So if you have the opportunity to just have a clear page on your website that is directly calling out MRSC rosters and linking to the MRSC rosters page, that is a pretty foolproof way of encouraging folks to join. If you're speaking one-on-one with a vendor, just connect them with us. Give them our contact information, give them the website information, and get them signed up. And we are here to help them. So, if they have trouble with the application or they have questions when they're filling something out, that is on us, that is not on you. So again, just point them back into our direction. We want to be here to hold their hand through that process if they should need that hand holding. And we know that some vendors do. There are folks out there who don't have, great access to an internet connection. There are folks who maybe aren't as tech savvy as others. And so that is why we want to be sure that we're supporting those businesses so that they just like anyone else, can get on your roster. So that being said, it looks like we don't have any other questions at this time, which is fine. It is a Monday morning, so we're probably all still finishing our second or third cups of coffee and waking up here. Just thank you all so much for being here. I know you are dealing with a crazy time, and so your time is really valuable, so I really appreciate it. Again, if you have questions that come up, contact me, send those in, and yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, have a great week, and I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you in person someday again. Take care. Bye.